Welcome to the apex of sports ownership, the Apex Athletic Collective.
Welcome in everyone to episode 62 of Instigate Success, Building an ABA Franchise. I am your host, as always, Jake Schoen, aka Jakey Muffins, from a different location tonight, but as always, 9 p.m. Eastern on Friday nights. We have just a couple of weeks now to go until the regular season kicks off. Hey, we got Jason in the crowd here. What's up? Always a good sight to see you here. But so different location for me tonight. Thoughts with everyone affected by the hurricanes. My place didn't get hit too bad, but I still did head out for the weekend just in case with that. But I will give a shout out to one of our players as well, Joe Bird. This is an old graphic, but we can throw that up there. Joe Bird, he is actually, he's been coming down and helping out restore the power lines down south from the hurricanes, and he'll be heading back down here to help restore power back to Florida following the past hurricane. So shout out to Joe, doing some great work for all those affected by the hurricanes. But let's get started in it. If you didn't catch it already, last week we had a scrimmage. We're ramping up for the regular season. So we had a scrimmage against the Shuckers. If you remember last season, we had a scrimmage before the season again with the Shuckers. That one, they got the better end, but this time we were able to get the victory by over 30 points. But the Shuckers are actually going to be joining the ABA in some capacity for the upcoming ABA season. I believe they're going to be an exhibition team, but they definitely have the talent level to compete with ABA teams, as we've seen, and that's where we've gotten some of our players in the past from as well. And the IBL is always a great league to do, all the partnerships that we've had, being a part of the Gold Cup in the summer, and then obviously having these scrimmages against the Shuckers this season and last season, and yeah, so the game, it definitely was. First half was a lot closer, and it definitely, as we progressed, I think we got to see some of the different playing styles with some of the new guys on the team. Believe it or not, AB, he played the game, but he had limited time, but he only had 1 point. So that was, pretty much our leading scorer aside from Lawan last season. Lawan did not play in this game. So if without Lawan, you would have expected AB to be the leading scorer. But we still did have a familiar face leading a scoring. It was Dylan Ware. But he definitely, and most of his points came in the second half. I think he only played a couple of minutes in that first half. But then we had a couple of new guys rounding out the top three in points. So we had LB and Malcolm Martin, I think, were the two other top scorers for that game. But the different lineups that we got to run, I think it was definitely beneficial, but I think that's more so what we're going to be seeing this season. We'll have some of the same guys that we had last season. Obviously, we've seen Chuck, JoJo, Dylan, AB, among other players, and Dylan. But we do also we've been kind of releasing our roster through social media. So if you've been following us there, you got to see a lot of the newer players that we're announcing on social. But we definitely had, so it was close in the first quarter, close in the first half, the second quarter as well. Then in the third quarter, Coach Dobbs made some adjustments and some good calls with the timeouts in that second half of the game, and really made some nice adjustments that put us out in front. And once we got out in front, we were able to keep our foot on the gas and hold on to that lead and continue to extend it. Comparing it to last season, I think one of the biggest differences that we noticed was the third quarter. The third quarter was pretty much always our downfall last season, but the third quarter was actually our best quarter in this particular preseason game. And we were able to continue that effort into the fourth quarter. I know a couple of times last season we had some games where we kind of let off towards the end, but that didn't happen in this one. We continued to put a good effort, as did the Shuckers. But the Shuckers, I think this was, kind of similar to last season. They are a very three dependent team. So when the threes stop falling, that's kind of when you have to take advantage. And the other thing that I really like that we implemented is the different defensive styles, especially the trap. When we were trapping them in the half court in the ABA, that always opens up the opportunity for a 3D rule, and we had several 3D rules we were able to take advantage of. But that's huge with the ABA, with that additional point on the possession. So I think that is definitely something we'll be having to continue to implement as we go into this season. But I know one particular a timeout, it was like within a minute of another timeout. But Coach Dobbs definitely knows what she's doing and had the team in line for a great preseason game. We're really looking forward over the next couple of weeks to get things ramped up into the regular season. But that was a 145 to 111 victory for the Instigators against the Shuckers. We do have that game over on our YouTube. If you want to catch the full game, I believe it is up there. We also have highlights on there as well. And talking about the new players on the team, we have been doing those little infographics. That's pretty cool. I like those as well. Gives us kind of a personality to just releasing the pictures and the names of the players. It helps you kind of relate, get to know a little bit more about them. But there is one final chance for anybody out there that is trying to become an instigator for season 2. There is the final tryout here at the Municipal Gardens Family Center. And that is a weekday at 7 p.m. That is, I believe, Tuesday. Yes, this Tuesday coming up at 7 p.m. $40 registration fee. You can register for that directly on our website. In this graphic, you can also type in that URL and get yourself directly to the ticket page for the tryout. But this is our last tryout before the regular season. One of the things we kind of mentioned briefly in that game stream for the preseason game is that we also have a reserve roster. So we do have the official, game day roster, you can call it like an active roster. So each week going into the game, we'll have that active roster with 12 players, but we've actually got so much talent this year that we have a couple of guys that are still on the team, but they're not going to be active for every game, and that's what the reserve roster is. It's almost like a practice squad, and that practice squad can help funnel into our active roster. But yeah, so good question. Do we have spots open? And so yes and no. So as far as having spots open on the roster, our roster technically is full at this point. So the 12 players, and then we have what we're building as a reserve roster. So kind of like practice squad, but that is allowing for us to have better practices, and also allows for us to do scrimmages in these practices, with us having enough players that we can have full 5-on-5 and then rotate players in and out as well. But it's also, if players, have injuries or can't make it to a game, conflicts and stuff that come up throughout the season. As we saw last season, we are building that reserve roster so that way we have a list of guys that are quite literally the next man up if some of those circumstances happen. I know last season we ran into a couple of games where we were pretty short on players. We had like 6 or 7 players for maybe 2 games last season. But that's where this reserve roster is going to help feed into that. So if we can only have 7 guys show up, you know, whether it's injury, illness, scheduling conflicts, we have that feeder system that we can have these guys called up directly. And then that way, the team, we already have them, they've been practicing with us, they're familiar with the team. And, then we have those guys right in line for that. And just because a player is on the reserve roster doesn't mean necessarily they're stuck on the reserve roster for the whole season. If they continue to impress, there is an opportunity for them to make it onto our active roster. We actually had that happen with one of our players so far, Caleb McGruder. And I'll jump over to the website. We updated that a little bit with some of the players and more information on there. But he was on the reserve roster, and then he also he impressed coach and all of our players repetitively enough that he made it onto our active 12-man roster. So there is the opportunity, even if you are on that reserve roster, to make it onto our 12-man roster. But this is our last scheduled tryout before we jump into the regular season. But that definitely is your last chance if anybody is out there looking to become an instigator. 7 p.m. on Tuesday. $40 registration fee. Go on our website or at that link right there, and you can go ahead and sign up. But again, even though we may have the roster, we still have some reserve spots. And then, like I said, if somebody impresses us enough, they can actually get onto that 12-man roster, and then it can shift somebody back to a reserve spot as well. So even though we've got guys on the team, there's still spots that can be earned. So that is the nature of professional sports. There's always a potential for your way to earn your spot. But that will lead into our home opener just a couple of weeks out. I think quite literally a couple of weeks out at this point. Yes. So that is Saturday, October 26th at 7:30 p.m. in Fishers, Indiana, the Best Choice Fieldhouse, our new home venue. That is going to be lots of fun. We got to see our first time seeing the venue on camera with that scrimmage, but definitely a different layout as far as the court goes compared to the Clinton CRC, our home venue from season 1. It's a little bit more of an intimate, you know, intimate setup where everybody's kind of front row seats, and it's just it's a field house, so we've got multiple courts. We've got one of the courts within there, but it is a pretty cool setup. And let's see. Looks like it might have camera may have went out, but that is probably due to the internet connection at a hotel. But anyways, so definitely a little bit of a different layout, and we got to see that for the first time. I'm looking forward to that trying to go out there in person for that home opener game. I've got my travel plans mostly arranged, so hopefully I'll be able to make it out there for that home opener. At least I do plan on being out there. Still have a couple of weeks left. If anybody wants to get tickets, you can go onto our website, and then I believe we now have it linked through Passage as well. So if you go on our website, it'll link you, direct you back to the Passage site to get your tickets. Tickets again are, I believe, $10, and then the season ticket package is $90. So you get 10 home games for $90. You save yourself the $10. You get an extra game for free. You also get some exclusive opportunities, pictures, meet and greets, and possibly some exclusive merchandise as well. But we do get to play a familiar team there, the Louisville Pros, for that home opener. So a little bit of history going into that matchup. And that first game, the home opener, is presented by the Stites family. You might have noticed in that stream that we did, we added some features as far as showing off some of our sponsors. We now have the sponsors up in the top corner, where we have Instigate Success here. We do have the ability here to rotate through our sponsors now, which is pretty cool, to see that we've got a nice handful of sponsors that we are able to continue to add onto that list, update our website, and then obviously now we'll have this when we've got our games as well, to scroll through our sponsor list. So we've got that. But that was something you may have noticed if you caught the scrimmage that we put, or the preseason game that we posted. You may have seen that on there. But we've got that. We also had a couple of new updates as far as going into the new season. We've got a couple of new promo videos. We'll show those real quick. It's about 30 seconds each. But we have the one for the upcoming season. That one also shows off our sponsors, and we'll jump onto that real quick. And we're continuing to try to make ourselves a little bit more professional, obviously, as we get into this next season and our game broadcasts. One of the things that's been brought up by Frosty was to implement some commercials that also, utilized our team. So instead of just having these commercials that we've been having, like that's one of our new updated ones that kind of follows our traditional path of the commercials, where we have graphics and then just kind of some music transitions and whatnot going along with that. We also are trying to implement some with our talent, whether that's players or owners. So Frosty made himself a nice Patreon promo here. So if you're watching the stream tonight live right now, I'm sure that you're part of Patreon already. But if you happen to catch this, on our YouTube in the following days, this is a great reason why you should join our Patreon. I'll let Frosty take that away. But this was a pretty cool little promo video that he shot.
Hey fans, it's Frosty, co-owner of the Hoosier State Instigators. Hope you're enjoying the broadcast, but I want to take just a few seconds to let you know about our fan voter tier on our Patreon. There you can find all kinds of cool stuff like behind the scenes footage of practices and tryouts, early access to games and podcasts, and much, much more. On top of that, you become an official fan voter of the Hoosier State Instigators, where you can make key decisions in running the franchise, Things such as what uniforms do we wear, who stays, who goes at the end of the season, evaluate the players and coaches, and make decisions that will impact this franchise for a long time. So this is your chance to get off the bleachers and into the boardroom with us, the Hoosier State Instigators, at www.patreon.com/Apex Athletic Collective. Hope to see you there.
So that was a Patreon promo that Corey shot. But I definitely think that's cool as well. I think that makes it a little bit more personable. And if you watch YouTube, I think that falls in line more with what the promo videos are on a lot of different streams as well. Seems to fall more in line with that. And also, gives a little bit more personality to those promo videos too. But let's jump into the schedule. So we have this. This is the updated schedule that's up on our website as well. But that October 26th game, that's our first home game, first game for the season as well. That is the home opener and the season opener, and we got it color coded there. And then we go on the road, 3-game stretch back at home. And then you see there, the first half of the season is mostly home games, which is going to be fun, getting ourselves, kind of settled in at the Best Choice Fieldhouse. And then in the second half of the season, it's kind of the reverse. We've got, larger stretches of the road games with some sporadic home games in between. In February, we only have one home game, and then March, there's only one game, but that's one home game. January, we have 2 home games compared to 3 away games. But February, we have several away games scheduled. But again, we are in a new division. So last season, we were in the Central Region Red Division. We are in the Central Division Black Division this year. So we play some of the familiar teams from last season, but you'll notice some new teams as well. First time matchups. But one of the coolest things I think about that realignment is that we now, and again, we get to play the defending champions. So last time it was the defending co-champion, the Indiana Lions. This time it is the defending outright champion, the Chicago Fury. So we have a couple of matchups against them, one at home and one on the road. But that's definitely, I think that's always, it's really cool to have those games on there. That way we can quite literally see how we match up against the defending champions. And then obviously, it kind of adds a little bit more motivation going into those weeks as well. But that's always the best way to see how you kind of stack up against the rest of the league, is if you can play the defending champion and see how you match up against them. But with them being in our division, that's also going to be something to keep an eye on as far as standings go throughout the season. And the other thing that I will point out in the upcoming season compared to last season's schedule is that we did add a couple of games that are back-to-back game days within the same weekend. So that is something we didn't really do last season, and once we got into the postseason and the play-in games, I think that was something that we could have tried to prepare for a little bit better. But you'll see in our upcoming schedule here, we do have, it looks like, a couple of weekends where we have those doubleheader games. So January 11th, January 12th, that one does stick out. That's a home game against the Midwest Monstars, a new team for us to play against, and then on the road against the Michigan Blaze. I'm not sure which part of Michigan that team is located in, but that is a home game and then an away game. So that is, obviously our home games are later on Saturday night, 7:30 p.m. And then depending on what the time of day is for that Michigan Blaze game, it's probably going to be, a late night travel or a really early morning travel for the team following that game the night prior. And that is, a weekend to keep an eye on. The other weekend where we have the doubleheader is February 21st and 22nd. That one is against two familiar teams, but both of those are on the road. So there will be a good amount of travel involved with that weekend in particular. The 21st, we play against the Ohio Kings, and then the 22nd, we play against the Nashville Aces. So if you think about that logistically, we'll be going from Indiana over to Ohio and then back to Nashville. So a decent amount of travel there. And then again, that is probably going to be the same kind of situation where we'll have to do late night travel following our game, the first part of that double header, and then jump into the next one the following day. But that is something I think that is going to be super beneficial once we get into the playoffs. Obviously, not only with the play-ins, we did see that with the play-ins where we had the back-to-back days, Saturday and Sunday games. Then we have the playoffs as well. Once we got into the Central region playoffs, we had, kind of like that. I think it was the top four seeds, and then they played each other, and then winners of those matchups played against each other. So it was back-to-back Saturday and Sunday games. Once we get into the playoffs, so that is something that will be pretty commonplace across the board for the ABA is the back-to-back Saturday and Sunday games, and then obviously, once you get into championship weekend, that is definitely the setup for that, as well as the back-to-back games. You have the Final Four and then the championship game that weekend, along with the All-Star game and All-Star festivities. So that is something that we are trying to get a little bit more prepared for in this season compared to last. But we also have, if you notice, more games on the schedule compared to our season from last. So that is, for a multitude of reasons. Obviously, we want to have more games that we can broadcast, more competition. Obviously, we want to play as many teams as we can, and kind of build on our team throughout the season. Last season we had 16 games, if I remember correctly. This season, I think we're on schedule for 20 games. So continuing to try to build on that, and that also, with how the ABA works, sometimes you do have last minute cancellations or you have to reschedule games. We've already had to reschedule one of those games, which was originally supposed to be the season opener. That's pushed back to the end of February now against the Aces. But that's just the nature of the ABA. And one of the benefits now with this season compared to last season is that the Shockers are now an exhibition team, so they can help fill in if we do run into any of those situations where a team does cancel last minute, or we have to change the schedule and we're looking for somebody to play for a weekend that we originally had something scheduled and we have to shift. The Shuckers are a team that will help fill in those situations. So that's also another benefit for this upcoming season. But I think we've got ourselves definitely prepared a lot better than last season. A lot more time spent on this off season building the team chemistry, and the guys have been practicing, doing scrimmages. We just had that preseason game, and you can tell the difference, I think, just by watching that preseason game. Their offense ran plays, which was not really something that we ran last season. I mean, we didn't have. I wouldn't say every single possession was a play, but we maybe implemented a couple. Last season, we really didn't implement any. And then the defense, we have the different defenses that we've been running, and it seems like they're on a lot more of the same page running the defenses compared to just strictly running a man-to-man. We have implemented a zone defense, and then obviously the backcourt trap is going to be huge, as I mentioned, going into this season. And then obviously we have, the more depth as well. going into this season. So as far as roster size and roster talent, we feel very confident compared to where we stood last season. But that is what we're looking forward to. Just a couple of weeks out, I think next week I might try to break down some numbers if I have some time, and see how we'll stack up against some of these new teams. I know I looked at like their overall records, but also if maybe there's some similar opponents that we played against last season, to see how we stack up against that. And yes, I definitely want to shout that out there. Yeah, coaches have been doing an amazing job throughout this off season. Coach Dobbs and Coach Julio, they have been on top of the team, running practices, scrimmages, and making sure we get ample amount of time with the team to build that team chemistry going into the season rather than trying to develop it during the season. I think that is going to be one of the things that we'll see right off the bat compared to last season, is that we are. It seems, as far as I know, that we are a lot more on the same page already at this pace going into the season compared to last season, where we kind of tried to develop it going into the season, didn't have it quite set, so we tried to build on it throughout the season. Didn't really have that team chemistry going until the second half of the season, towards the later half of the later end of the season. But I think that's something we will notice going into the season this time, is that we have a team chemistry. Some of these guys have been playing together from last season, and then some of them, joined the team, but we've been practicing. That was already on there. But I think that is one of the key factors, I think, going into the season, and one of the reasons we have a little bit higher expectations for this season coming up compared to where we were last season. Obviously, I think everybody within the organization expects for us to improve upon what we did the first season, I think our goal this season is, I mean, obviously the goal every season is to win the championship. But for me personally, if I'm going to put what I expect, is, I think we have the roster and the talent to have a winning record overall, and then to be locked into the playoffs rather than in the play-in games. That's my two personal goals I have going into the season. Yeah, and that's a great thing that we did last season was the trunk or treat. I think we are trying to do something like that, if not the same type of thing, this upcoming season. Obviously, the schedule is a little bit different. We start a little earlier compared to last season. Last season, our first game was in November. Our first game now is actually before Halloween. But I think we are still trying to do that. I know we've been trying to still be involved within the community. Some of our owners are pretty local to that Fishers area, so they're definitely involved within the local community, and they are looking actively to see what we can do to kind of build our presence, and especially stuff like that with the trunk or treat, kind of build our brand and help bring kids and their families to the games. I think that is definitely something we're continuing to plan on trying to do, but I'll have to wait to see exactly what we are doing before we make any announcements on that. But I know that is something we are actively working on trying to do again this season. But I think that is what I have. We'll jump over to our website to show the updates. Hopefully the internet is stable enough here at the hotel. But I think we're good. So we've got that tryout. You can go right there, click on that to register. And this is the website. We've got the update here. As far as the website, there's a couple of updates. You got the schedule on here. New sponsorship graphic, actually, right there. So there's a couple of different sponsorship opportunities. Still have, continuing to build on our sponsors. And then there was our news clip video there. But we continue to update this. You can see we've got some of these things updated here. So as far as all-stars, players in other leagues, I think we've got a couple of things to update on there, actually. But you can see this will go right to our YouTube. One of the things we've been working on is the roster. It's still not 100% finished as far as all the links and whatnot, but we do have the updated pictures and names. So I will say we have that. As far as the player info, that is not all updated on it. So if you click on it, it may pop up with not the right information. But we do have our coaches on there, Coach Dobbs and Coach Julio. And then if you want a sneak peek of our roster here before we get through all of those announcements on social, we do have it here. Lance, we have already announced that he was a part of the team. AB, obviously, Hollywood, he is one of our key guys returning. Stunna Boy, he has been announced as well, newcomer for the Instigators. Chuck Bloom, one of the team captains the team captain from last year, returning in team captain role. And I will say that was one of the guys, especially that we saw in the scrimmage this past not scrimmage preseason game is Chuck actually got to play more of his natural position. So he was kind of forced down low for that whole season last year. But he had to play more of like a stretch guard and forward. And he definitely did real well in that. We got to see some of his 3-point shooting ability. Some more of our returning guys. We got JoJo Hart, Joe Bird, and some of these we don't have the updated graphics, so that's why I said we're working through this. But we do have some of this updated. So we got Joe Bird, Dylan Ware, and Swish. All of those guys returning as well on there. And then we got some of our new guys as well as returning player, but Robert Mitchell, Steve Rogers, aka Captain America. I'm sure there's some kind of copyright claim that we're going to have to be careful with, putting that on there. But hopefully, whoever has that copyright doesn't care enough to go on our website and say something about it. Then we got Malcolm Martin. He was one of our top scorers, as well as LB, Lawrence Boyd, two new guys who played very well in that preseason game. Then we got Mike Pugh, and that is something you'll see with Mike on all of his graphics for this upcoming season is the Evolve Sports logo. He is our first player to have a player sponsorship. So all of his graphics are going to feature his player sponsor, Evolve Sports, on all those graphics, which is cool. Jackson Stone comes over from the Indiana Lions. And then we've got a couple of more guys here towards the bottom of our page. Caleb Magruder, as I mentioned, he was one of our reserve players, but he impressed and got himself onto the active 12-man. So that is, a true success story as far as the reserve players jumping into the 12-man roster. Then we got T, which doesn't have a picture quite yet. And then we've got a couple of reserve players there, Anthony Williams and Reese Weber. And then we do have at the bottom here our former players and staff as well. And then you can see we updated the store a little bit again. We've got the link here for the Oakland Ballers. That'll jump you over to their webpage. As always, we got the get involved. So if you want to contact us for being a potential player, obviously sign up for that tryout. But you can also go here and send us your information. Fan voters, that'll give you information on our Patreon. Then volunteers, anybody that wants to volunteer or intern. But the shop, you'll see, we're working on getting that updated as well. But we'll have to get, I think we may have trimmed it already. So we do have our updated players, at least returning players, jerseys, and then custom jerseys. And then we also have the links over here on the side for specific players. So if you want your AB merchandise, you can get your AB jersey and then the AB shirt as well. So we do have that updated where you can do that directly for some of our returning players. Sponsors, which we've been shouting out. You can go over on our sponsors tab and see all of the wonderful sponsors that support your Hoosier State Instigators. And then if you're interested or know somebody that would be interested, you could send them this information. And you can also see we got this, which is pretty cool, to have your sponsorship opportunities here. If you're a business, you can actually pick a specific player as well. And then our tickets. So we got it updated now. So if you click on that, it's actually going to jump you over to the passage page. So we'll share that instead. So that should get you over. Yep. So that is, this is our ticketing page. So you can buy your season tickets, individual game tickets. I kind of teased some of those graphics a couple of weeks ago on Instigate Success, but you can see all of the graphics now for your game tickets as far as our home games. We'll jump back onto this, but those are some of those updates that we've been working on throughout the off season as we jump into this regular season. And we're going to continue to do a little bit more, but we should have it all squared away around the start of the season. Let's jump back on to, was that last week, I think? No, 2 weeks ago. We did have I think I missed the show last week, possibly. Yeah, actually, last week we didn't have the show. So 2 weeks ago, we had on the show that we were on a NASCAR again for the second time. So we were on a NASCAR again for the second time. Brad Perez, our driver, he got the opportunity to drive the number 45 Apex Coffee Chevrolet for Alpha Prime Racing. And there's some better pictures as far as the team, the team logo being on the car. But we got a couple of shout outs actually from him on social media. This one in particular is pretty awesome. He thanked us, and then he also threw in there at the end that he's got a hoop with us. So interesting. We'll have to see where that leads. Nothing official at this point, but that would be pretty cool. I know we do have with the ABA, there is the opportunity for a celebrity player, the 13th man, for any home game. So that is definitely maybe something we'll have to talk about a little bit further. And we did get it onto the broadcast as briefly and as little as that logo may have been on the car. That still was on national television on the CW. Like the little clip from SpongeBob back in the day, where they had the commercial from the Krusty Krab, and he was pointing out to Gary, "Hey Gary, there I am." That's kind of what this was. We were on the CW. Oh, there's the Instigators car. So that was a fun opportunity to be back on his car. He is racing again this week. We are not on board this week, and hopefully that's for the best for Brad. We've been on his car twice, and he has had a mechanical failure both of the times that we've been on the car. So we are actually not on his car this week, and hopefully, again, that is in best interest of him. And if he winds up running extremely well and his car doesn't break, I think we may have to have a talk with him, and maybe we'll put a modified logo, or a logo with our name, or the Apex Athletic Collective, or something on the car that's a little bit different, because if he runs well this week and his car doesn't have an issue, I'm a little superstitious when it comes to that, especially with being a NASCAR fan. If specific sponsor and specific logo on a car carries, a couple of DNFs, did not finish. So he's got 2 DNFs with us on the car. So hopefully he runs well this week, and then we can talk with him and see what we can do to, not bring bad luck to his car the next time. But he did have a mechanical failure again for this race. But he did run pretty well in practice, and this was his first time running a 1.5 mile oval in the Xfinity series, so that was pretty cool. Pretty cool opportunity as well to be a part of that again. But he's a great guy to be be partnered with as far as NASCAR goes, and he was. He was actually hooping in the infield. He found a basketball hoop on the infield, and he was playing basketball with some of the other NASCAR drivers. So maybe he means that quite literally when he does say he's got to hoop with us at some point. It looks like he is working on his game actively. But yeah, so best of luck to him. He races tomorrow, and again, he will not have our logo on the car, but he is driving the number 45 car again. So if anybody wants to watch that and keep track of it, that is something to keep an eye on. Because again, I'm a little superstitious when it comes to that stuff. So if he runs well and his car doesn't have a failure, we're definitely gonna have to talk with him and tweak what we put on the car for the next time. So this is kind of a litmus test for both of us this weekend. But that's actually where I am out in the Carolinas right now. The race is out in Charlotte, so I'll be there tomorrow in person. So that is what I've been doing, and then for the last few minutes here, we'll jump into what I did today. Actually, it's not quite related directly to the Instigators, but this is kind of a little bit more of the origin story of my fandom with sports in general. So because of the hurricane, I decided to travel up to the Carolinas just preemptively in case anything did happen, being based in Daytona. But luckily, my place wasn't impacted too bad. Some flooding in the nearby area. Other people definitely got hit a lot worse than my apartment complex. So, as I said, thoughts are definitely with those people affected by the storm. But I was out in the Carolinas and got to travel out to several of the race shops today. That was actually what I got to do. And one race shop in particular, Joe Gibbs Racing, they're one of the most famous race teams. Coach Joe Gibbs, he was the Washington football coach in the NFL team for I think several or a couple of decades. Super Bowl winning coach. He wound up deciding to run his own race team. But these two pictures I took in particular are kind of important to me in my sports fandom. So obviously on the left you got JJ Yili fire suit. So he raced for Joe Gibbs. Like this is a fire suit from his number 18 car, which he only ran for 2 seasons back in 2007 and 2006 and 2007, which is crazy that they have a whole museum there and that they still have his fire suit from quite literally 17 years ago. That is it's mind blowing to me. I mean, that to me that brought back a lot of memories because that was really, I mean, my first like favorite athlete that I've ever had was JJ Yili. So that is pretty crazy to see his fire suit from when he first started racing in the NASCAR Cup Series, which is the top level. But he really, I mean, if you think about it, if you're familiar with NASCAR, that's such an odd one because he wasn't very successful with the team. He wound up getting fired, and he didn't do quite as much as what was expected with that type of team. So for them to still have some of his stuff up in the shop it's just kind of mind blowing to me, which is crazy. But the picture on the other side, the Dover Monster with the combos number 18, that was the first. This is crazy to me. I can't even believe I noticed this when I saw it. The first ever race and in the first ever if I remember correctly, the first ever professional sporting event I ever went to, that's the trophy from the 2008 Dover NASCAR Cup Series race. Kyle Busch drove the number 18 car. I was a little bitter about it because Yili drove the car in 16 and not 16, '06 and '07, and then he got fired, and then Kyle Busch took over for him in 2008. They switched over from Chevy to Toyota, and then Kyle Busch is a very, very successful driver, has had lots of success and lots of wins. But that was the first race we went to, and Kyle Busch wound up winning that race with the 18 car when I was, still bitter about him taking that car from Yili. But I still avidly remember that. I was little. I got like a little toy combos car. We were actually in the Kyle Busch suite for that race, which was crazy. But that brought back a lot of memories. I can't believe those two things were in the same room, in Joe Gibbs' race shop. So that was something I just wanted to shout out. And if you're a fan of NASCAR or auto racing, if you're in the Charlotte area, there are several shops you can check out for the race teams, and they're open to the public. But Joe Gibbs, I mean, as I mentioned, that was the first team that Yili drove for, and I'm still to this day, like with interstate batteries being on that car, and with Joe Gibbs Racing, that's still like something that I particularly will seek out as an interstate battery because of that. But that's crazy that I got to see some of those childhood memories reimagined in real life, and kind of see those again. The other thing, though, I will say, I saw a few of these different shops. The one other one, and this is the newest shop, the one that everyone talks about is, and you have to be careful because they don't call it a shop; they call it Airspeed. So it's completely separate, something different than a regular NASCAR team race shop. They call it Airspeed. It is 2311 Racing. 2311 is one of the most already famous race teams in NASCAR. They've only been around for a few years, but it's 23 Michael Jordan and 11 Denny Hamlin, current NASCAR driver, and then obviously the GOAT for the NBA, Michael Jordan. So the office, you can go in there. Again, that's open to the public as well. But you can go in there and see some of their cars in person. So they had a Jordan branded race car there, which is crazy. Obviously, we're a basketball team, that associates with, we've been sponsored. We sponsor NASCARs, so to see Jordan NASCAR is pretty awesome as well. They have ran a few different Jordan variants of NASCAR paint schemes, and that is one of the. I think that's the one they're running next week in Las Vegas, and then their boardroom is they have Jordans hanging up in the boardroom with the number 23. That's pretty crazy. But that shop's brand new, and it's definitely, if you're a fan of the Instigators, a fan of the Apex Athletic Collective, fan of basketball and racing, that's definitely a place that I would recommend to go see in person. And that car is actually a Tyler Reddick car. Tyler Reddick drives the 45. Bubba drives the 23. As odd as it is, I think typically when they do the Jordan cars, it's normally Tyler Reddick. I think Bubba has only had one or two Jordan cars, and Tyler Reddick has ran several. And then Kurt Busch, when he ran for 2311, also ran, I think, a couple of the Jordan paint schemes. But you can see even the building has like Jordan inspiration with the shoes. It's got like that, I guess they call it like an elephant print on the sides. You can kind of see it all the way over in that right corner of the building with the glass. But on the inside of the building, they also have that elephant print, all throughout the building as well. But they had some of their race cars in there. That one, obviously, they were working on. But they have, several race cars inside that you can see. But that is, it was cool, to be a part, to be able to see into the shops and stuff. And then the other one, I didn't post any pictures of it. That I did go to see. There are a couple other ones I saw. I saw Trackhouse, which is another famous celebrity owners as far as that goes. Justin Marks and Pitbull, Pitbull, Mr. Worldwide. He is a co-owner of that team, and then Justin Marks, one of the owners of GoPro and K1, I believe, as well. The race. Like go-karts, but GoPro, the cameras. So he's one of the co-owners or co-founders of that. And then Pitbull, obviously a famous musician. And then the other one I did get to see was Stewart Haas Racing, owned by Tony Stewart and Gene Haas. Tony Stewart, former driver, but that one, Stewart Haas Racing, is closing. So after this season, they'll be out of business. But that was just something I decided I'd share, going off of what I was able to see today. I thought was pretty cool. But that 2311, that's really cool. I think that's something, kind of we can relate to, something we can kind of shoot for in the future. Obviously, we're starting with basketball. We've expanded already to a baseball with the Oakland Ballers, and we want to continue to expand. So this is cool to see how they implemented both basketball, a basketball icon into automobile racing. So that is really cool. But that is, an hour. That's what we're scheduled for the show. But we'll do quick last minute reminders. So open tryout, the last scheduled tryout for the Instigators before we jump into season 2, Tuesday at 7 p.m. different location than normal at the Municipal Gardens Family Event Center, 7 p.m., $40 registration fee. If you are interested in becoming an Instigator, this may be your last chance to do so for this season. And even though we've got a a roster, there's still spots to be earned. If you show us why you deserve a spot over a guy, you are going to get that spot. And then we do have reserve spots as well. So we have that on Tuesday. And then just a couple of weeks out, we'll have next weekend. And then the following weekend will be our home opener at the Best Choice Fieldhouse, our first time having a regular season game there. Saturday, October 26th at 7:30 p.m. Again, that game is presented by the Stites family, one of our wonderful sponsors for this upcoming season. But that is all for tonight's episode. Thank you, as always, for joining us for Instigate Success, building an ABA franchise. Again, as always, Friday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern. And until next time, as always, be great and instigate.